November 19th, 2015. This is the Hermetic Hour. I'm your host, Poke Runyon. And tonight we present the final discussion on the Tree of Life, Kether and the supernals. In our series on the tree, we have worked from the bottom up, and now we will have to shift into reverse and start down from above. We will outline the theory of 4 dimensions on the tree and how each dimension contains its own tree. Kether of Malkuth being the heaven with God on his throne, if that's what you want. And we will also deal with the 2 higher dimensions, Atziluth and Bria, and the Hokmah Bina Yin-Yang effect. And our main text will be Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah, that's Qabalah, which is the main source for both Gareth Knight and John Michael Greer's work on that subject. Now, there will be some surprises in store, so tune in and we'll take heaven by storm. All right, let's start off here by going back to 1996 and the Book of Solomon's Magic. And the reason why I'm starting back there is because we have a definition of the magical Kabbalah in here, which I want to start off with, because we're starting, this is really the start of the tree up at the top. And as I said in the abstract, we started this study some months ago down at the bottom and worked our way up, because that's the way most people work the tree. But now that we're coming up to the top 3 spheres, the supernals, we really, to do this right, we have to sort of reverse ourselves and go up to the top and work our way down. At least work our way down through Binah and Da'at. So, way back in 1996, and I promise you we are going to get out a second edition of Solomon's Magic. We do have that on it's on the back burner. I'd like to move it to the front burner, but right now it's still on the back burner. But we will get one out, hopefully next year sometime. Chapter 5, the Kabbalah of Wizardry, starts off with some preliminary poetry up at the top. And this was quoted from one of my karmic ancestors, a shaman by the name of Kakiabo, and it goes this way. In the beginning there was whirling darkness, the mother of night and the dragon of chaos, and the dragon embraced the mother of night, who gave birth to 2 sons, the light, who shone forth to ensoul the worlds, and time, who gave meaning to eternity. Now, that's not, I don't think that's quite on the level with Blavatsky's stanzas of Daizan, but it's, it's interesting. And the stanzas of Daizan, by the way, is not something Blavatsky made up. It actually does come from an ancient Tibetan text. So, Chapter 5 starts off, the Kabbalah of Wizardry. Remember, as above, so below, as within, so without. And at this point, you might be wondering, how can we, as mere mortals, presume to invoke archangels and evoke ancient gods, goddesses, and demon kings, and even we have the essential operative secrets, hypnosis, the mirror reflection method, and the aura-producing crystal. But where do we get the special knowledge, the philosophy, and the empowerment to use these methods in magical operations? The philosophy behind Solomon's Magic is Kabbalah. I spelled out Kabbalah, which is the Hebrew spelling. In magic, the Kabbalistic mindset is as important as the hypnotic operating technique. If hypnosis is the tactic of the wizard, then Kabbalah is his strategy. About this, there is comforting news and challenging news. The challenging news is that you cannot escape learning the basics of Kabbalah. The comforting news is that you don't need to read Hebrew any better than some Tibetan lamas can read Sanskrit, and they're still excellent magicians. Now, please understand, I don't propose to teach you Kabbalah in this book. This short chapter merely sets forth the special characteristics of our version of Kabbalah, and you can familiarize yourself with the grand old system and the works we've recommended in the study guide. Now, with this in mind, let's look briefly at what I call the Kabbalah of wizardry. It was developed in the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance by nominally Christian magicians and is usually referred to as the Hermetic Kabbalah. Now, how does it differ from the Rabbinical Kabbalah, and just how pagan or how Gnostic or how Judeo-Christian isn't it, or is it? These questions may not seem important at this point, but they will loom large as you begin a serious study of the subject. So I will do my best to answer them as briefly and as simply as I can right at the outset of your training. Let us begin by attempting a one-sentence definition of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a philosophical, mathematical, geometric system that describes the creation and operation of the universe through 4 dimensions by employing a schematic design containing 10 spheres of descending emanation connected by 22 paths attributed to letters of the alphabet and their numerical equivalents. Now, that's very concise, but that is basically what is Kabbalah. Now, this is a starting point, but not much better than giving the weight, height, and color as the definition for an elephant. Essential to understanding Kabbalah is the concept of Ein Sof, the limitless nothing, that contracts into itself and produces the Ein Sof Aur, the limitless light, which then expands to produce the universe and continues to enliven and to ensoul it. Now, this conception predates modern physics, the modern physics Big Bang theory, by thousands of years. It also puts Kabbalistic philosophy in a very controversial position in relation to Orthodox, Jewish, and Christian religion. At the highest level, the Kabbalist can conceive God is not judgmental or in any way dissatisfied with his creation. He simply is, and he continues to be. Ahea, I am becoming. A contemporary popular analogy would be the Force in the Lucas Star Wars films. The universe is therefore operated by lesser, more differentiated personifications such as angels, gods, goddesses, and elemental spirits. The idea was originally Neoplatonic, the philosophical high water mark of classical paganism, and can be explained further in the writings of the philosopher Plotinus and his followers. And we attribute all these lesser powers to the various spheres and paths of the tree of life structure described in our one-sentence definition. We can then access them for knowledge and for help. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get on into what we're discussing, the 3 supernals, the 3 top spheres, the beginning of the tree of life. Now, in order to grasp the beginning of the beginning, to begin at the beginning, okay, let's return to what we said about the limitless nothing and the limitless light. Now, the limitless nothing, that's the Ein, contracts itself, and the Ein is nothing, and the Sof is limitless. So the Ein Sof is the limitless nothing. It contracts into itself and produces the Ein Sof Aur. Now, this is not exactly the way the old Kabbalists described it. They thought that the limitless darkness was in contrast to and coexisting with what they call the limitless light. And then they said the limitless light contracted and formed Kether. Well, other Kabbalists closer to modern physics have gotten the idea that the limitless nothing, the limitless darkness, in other words, dark matter, it condensed and produced a point of light as a compression explosion. In fact, this goes along with what some adept once told Dion Fortune. If you want a one-word definition of God, pressure. Think about that. A one-word definition of God, pressure. Yeah, so the Ein Sof, the limitless nothing, the darkness, the dark universe, it out of this comes a spark of light. It compresses, and this is why they call the beginning of the whirlings that we call the Ein Sof up there in Kether, the beginning of the whirlings, and this whirlpool compresses tighter and tighter and tighter until finally it explodes into light, and then the light becomes limitless light, and it in turn ensouls the worlds. It is an entity into itself. But the most important thing to understand about Kether, about the God force of Kether, is that it is absolutely non-judgmental. It can't be. It cannot be judgmental. This is something that the fundamentalists just simply cannot grasp. When I say fundamentalists, I mean fundamentalists both of the Judaic and the Christian views. They can't grasp this. How can God be just up there? He's just satisfied with himself. God is completely satisfied with himself. He just is. And so consequently everything that exists, it's what we call good and evil and cosmos and chaos and everything, all of this, God's happy with it. I mean, he is. And this is why Ahea, that formula, I am what I am. And as Dion Fortune points out, it doesn't mean just that. It means I am becoming, because he continually becomes. He is and he becomes. And that force radiates. Now, there's another way of looking at this, which we're going to look at also in Binah, because the next two Sephirot in the next dimension, Bria, next dimension down, the next two Sephirot have a lot in a way. Their action has a lot in common with Kether's action on them. And Kether, by the way, Kether exists in one dimension, top of the tree. Absolute, one dimension. And that the only sphere in that dimension is Kether. The mechanics of the Kabbalah are kind of difficult to get your head around sometimes. It's or get your arms around. It's kind of hard. But if you meditate on the tree, and especially if you meditate on the way it's broken down in dimensions and in levels, if you meditate on it, you will eventually get a Kabbalistic perspective. And I want you to look at the tree not as a map, but as a schematic. Don't think of it as a road map. It's a schematic. I know we use a road map analogy sometimes with path workies, but we're really not. Electrical schematic is a better analogy. Now, over on page 62 in Solomon's Magic, we have the Phoenician Kabbalah of the OTA. We have a diagram of the Tree of Life. And up at the top, we have Absolute, dotted lines. And then below that, we have an ellipse that contains both Hokmah and Binah, the two Sephira in the next dimension, which is Bria. Now, Absolute, dimension of the tree. And by the way, these four dimensions, below Bria, we have Da'athasad, Geburah, Tippereth, Netzach, and Hod, and half of Yesod in the Sephira Yetzirah, the so-called astral plane. And below that, you have half of Yesod and all of Malkuth in Ashia. That's the physical world. And that's one dimension down there. So if you notice the way the tree is structured, the top dimension, which were the limitless nothing and the limitless light and the Kether, the point of origin, that's one dimension, and then the kingdom, Malkuth, down below the physical. That's one dimension, and then we have this astral dimension, and then we have between there and the top we have Bria, the archangelic dimension with the other two. Now they are attributed to the Tetragrammaton, and also all of the symbolism of the Tetragrammaton, of course, starts with these four dimensions, and so Atziluth with the tree, Atziluth being that original emanation of power, that is that's where we get the color scale letters for our Kabbalistic formulas, because we have four different scales of our formulas for each one of these dimensions, and this is why a study of this is important to the magician. You really, really need to get the Kabbalah in your guts, and we require that you memorize the tree and the basic correspondences and all that before you go to second degree, and you should, because this software in your personal brain computer, and then you can really do magic. But without it, frankly, without it, you don't do very well, because this is the software that you operate with. Now let's before we go from Kether, Kether has, as I say, no personality except in one of the lower dimensions. Now, I must digress to explain that. Each one of these four dimensions, each one of them, has a whole tree inside itself, and you can explore as a magician, going up a tree, doing your own path workings, doing your own ascension or whatever. You can explore the tree from in any one of these dimensions. It's actually pretty difficult up in Bria and Atziluth. That's getting awfully high up there. But in Yetzirah, in Ashia and Yetzirah, you can do this. And this is why I said in the abstract that the Kether of Malkuth is where you're going to find God on His throne, if that's what you want. And this is where you're going to find the scene like John of Patmos describes in the Book of Revelation. This is where you're going to find that sort of a scene. If you want to find anthropomorphic symbolism, it's going to have to be, for Kether, it's going to have to be in Kether of Malkuth. So you got to stay down in Malkuth and go up to Kether there, and you might be able to get some anthropomorphic symbolism. Higher than that, you're not going to get anthropomorphic symbolism out of Kether. It's the Force. Use the Force, Luke, and that's so. Consequently, let's be aware that there are different levels of each one of these spheres, including the top supernals. Now, with that said, let's take a look at, it really helps if you have one of these little Tree of Life cards showing the tree from BOTA or something like that. If you got one of these, or if you're looking at it when you're listening to these lectures on the tree, and those of you who go back and listen to them on the archives, get a little Tree of Life diagram with the correspondences on it. It sure helps when I'm talking about these. Now, Atziluth goes down to Chokmah and Binah, both of which are in the dimension of Bria. And so it goes through dimensions, and it hits first. It hits like the lightning flash. Now remember the flaming sword. The flaming sword goes from Kether down to Chokmah, across to Binah, down through to Ath, and on to Hesed and Yetzirah and whatever. And so you need to take a look at that flaming sword or lightning flash diagram too. But in Bria, which is the archangelic dimension, which is the you remember our analogy that, we used Alain Duquette's analogy of Plato when he described Plato's theoretical preformed chair, the idea we're going to build a chair according to God's desire. And Lon used this to describe the whole function of the tree. And it starts off, up in Kether, where God is up in Kether and he says, rest. And Hokmah and Binah, they down there in Bria, that's the senior staff, and they say, hey, the old man wants a chair. And so then they start giving orders down to the people who do the planning and have the workshop and everything down at Yazira, and eventually the chair ends up in the showroom down in Malkuth, and those of us can. Oh, I have a call. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, Poke, it's Joe Carson.
Oh, hi there, gracious lady. I am so glad you called because tonight we're going to talk about Dion Fortune's concept of especially of Binah, and I think you're going to love it.
Okay.
And, her book, The Mystical Kabbalah, has been basically the mainstay of this course we've been giving on the Kabbalah, and I hope that book's still in print. I know I've been referring to it over and over and over again. But let me go on, and I'll get to that. I'm just about to get to that. So, and when I get to it, I've got a quote from Dion Fortune that you're just going to love.
Can I just put my question in line, and then you can answer it whenever it's appropriate, okay?
Okay. Put your question.
So here's my question. I thought maybe you could bring into the discussion the role of death for people and where that is on the Tree of Life, how that works, whether Da'ath is involved, and is there a role for the ancestors in terms of the Tree of Life? And by that I mean the ancestors for each individual, like I have my ancestors, you have your ancestors. Is there any role that can be discussed for the ancestors and then, for our individual deaths as we are looking at the overall Tree of Life, and then also does this relate at all to, or is there a connection that you could describe between the levels of initiation that we go through as we advance, for instance, in the OTA? And I can take my answer whenever it's convenient for you to answer on. I'll take it offline.
I think we can deal with that. And you have our Hermetic Yoga book, and you're familiar with the Da'ath, the section on Da'ath, which we attribute to Saturn, and of course that's the area of your question. And we're just about to get to that, but we have to go through Bria and the Hokmah and Binah connection, and then we'll be to that. So bear with us.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and sign off, and I'll look forward to hearing the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, right. Okay, now Hokmah. That's over on the right side of the tree, which is the pillar of mercy, and of course on the other side of the tree, which is the feminine side of the tree, is the pillar of severity. And Dion Fortune has some nice rationale on that, but the Hokmah is the masculine aspect of Bria, and Binah is the female aspect of Bria. And what this amounts to is that Hokmah and Binah are the two halves of God. And this is here again. This is one of these things. It's kind of difficult to get your arms around this, but this is the way it works, because Kether is completely androgynous. Kether is the birth of the great soul, and the birth of and it's the birth of light and whatever, and the soul is light, and it differentiates as it emanates, it differentiates, and Hokmah is what is referred to as the beginning of consciousness. And consciousness then contemplates itself, and this is like Adam's rib and Adam and Eve. Then it splits off. It looks at itself. Now, Hokmah, which is referred to as wisdom, and then Binah is referred to as understanding. That's a good analogy, male and female, wisdom and understanding. But it forms the best visual analogy of what this does is to think of it as a yin yang. We've all seen the yin yang symbol. It's like a big light-colored teardrop or white teardrop with a black dot in the middle of it, chasing around a black teardrop with a white dot in the middle of it. And I like to refer to this as the two-stroke engine of the universe. Because this is what it is. It's sort of chug. It's a two-stroke engine, and but go a little further with it. The male side of it, Hokmah, the male side, and here again, this is one of these things that the feminists have been a little unhappy about. That the Kabbalah considers the original energy to be male. Well, yes, in a way, and no, and we'll get to that because Hokmah is that energy, and it in turn can be said to, as this yin yang two-stroke engine goes, it can be said to impregnating Binah, which is referred to as the supernal mother. And the supernal mother and the fertile mother. And also, Binah is also the realm of the fixed stars, the realm of the universe. It's the dark. It's here again, like that limitless light. I like the Ein Sof, like that limitless nothing. It's the vast universe. Whereas Hokmah is referred to as the zodiac, the origin of the zodiac. In other words, those are the stars that we know. So Hokmah is impregnating Binah, the universe, with the stars that we know. Okay, and that's the Kabbalistic analogy. However, Dion Fortune makes a very, very good point about this, and what she's saying is that if you want to take a sexual analogy here. Then really, Binah, the female side, is just as creative as the male side. And give me a second here to, as I'm talking, to sort of find my little quote here that I have in Dion Fortune to describe this. Let's see. I think this is it. Consider now the maleness and femaleness of this pair of supernal opposites as reflected in the act of generation. The spermatozoa of the male are incapable of more than the briefest life. They are the simplest possible units of energy. And once that energy is expanded, they dissolve. But the reproductive mechanism of the female, the womb that bears, and the breasts that feed are capable of bringing this handed-on life to independent life of its own. And yet all this elaborate machinery must lie inert till the stimulus of the Hokmah force sets it in action. The female reproductive unit is all potential, but inert. The male reproductive unit is all potent, but incapable of bringing to birth. Now, that means that without the female principle of the universe, and this is also referred to as the Soma Sophia, the goddess of the stars, Nuit, and Well, as I say, the Soma Sophia was the great goddess of the stars, and she was the fallen thought of God, if you remember in Gnostic philosophy. So the Chokmah and Binah analogy for creation is vitally important and represents both halves of God. Now, when I say both halves of God, God is not. Don't think of God as necessarily as bisexual. You think of God in this sense as more of a pair, a married pair, a king and a queen. That's the better way to look at it. Now I'm going to get to this quote here that I wanted Lady Jo to pay attention to, and this is, when I came across this, I thought, oh boy, this right now, Prater Solomon and I are working on the chapter in the new yoga book on Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and when I ran across this, I thought this is something we have to just quote directly in the book in the marriage of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, which, by the way, Jesus likened Mary Magdalene to the Queen of Sheba. We just discovered that in both Matthew and Luke. But marriage was the main thing. The main thing Jesus was concerned about was sanctifying and empowering the female through the rite of marriage, giving her total equality with the man. And he was very concerned about that. And that's not just my opinion, that's in Scripture. Okay, so this is what I want to say about the marriage of Chokmah and Binah. And this is Dion Fortune. Marriage is not a matter of two halves, but of four quarters, uniting in balanced harmony of reciprocal function. Binah and Chokmah are balanced by Hod and Netzach. There are goddesses as well as gods for man to worship. She means man in the collective sense. Boaz and Yachim are both pillars of the temple, and only when united do they produce stability. A goddessless religion is halfway to atheism. In the word Elohim, we find the true key. Elohim is translated God in both the authorized and revised versions of the Holy Scriptures. It really ought to be translated God and Goddess, for it is a feminine noun with a masculine plural termination affixed. This is an incontrovertible fact in its linguistic aspect at any rate, and it is to be presumed that the various authors of the books of the Bible knew what they meant and did not use this peculiar and unique form without good reason. And the spirit of the male and female conjoined principles moved upon the surface of the formless, and manifestation took place. If we want equilibrium instead of our present condition of unequal stress, we must worship the Elohim, not Jehovah. I'll repeat that. If we want equilibrium instead of our present condition, unequal stresses, we must worship the Elohim, not Jehovah. Which brings me to say that the worst thing that ever happened to God was Jehovah. So that right there is I say, I think that is a dynamite quote from Dion Fortune. Now, let's consider what happens when Chokmah and Binah come together, and from them produce this emanation downward, which goes on down across the abyss, between the dimensions, going on down into Yezura, and of course the the first sphere that the lightning flash runs into is Sed, and that is attributed to El, which of course is the original God of the Bible, but before it gets there, what it has to do is go through this phantom circle, or this phantom sphere here, right in the middle, on the middle pillar, right in the middle of the tree, called Da'ath. And this is the one that Joe was asking about. Da'ath is the depth point, and this creates a number of interesting situations here. The original numbering of the 10-sphere tree, and we've discussed this numerous times during this series, and of course we discuss it at some length in the Hermetic Yoga book, that the tree as we have it, which is the Athanasius Kircher version of it, the tree as we have it, the Manudum Mundum, has got 10 spheres. And this, is in the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, it says the tree has 10 spheres, not 9, not 11. It just has 10, and that's it. And of course, they're thinking about the 10 fingers on your hand and the 10 toes on your feet and whatever. But there has been, for quite a while, ever since the 13th century, we've had an 11th sphere. And that 11th sphere is it's kind of necessary, actually, because we have to have it. Between on the lightning flash. We have to have it right down, running from Bria right to his head, and it's right there where the lightning flash crosses the middle pillar at the edge of the abyss, and that sphere, Da'ath, means knowledge. And there's all kinds of interesting things about that sphere, which we're going to have to get into, because this is where these supernais come down. But before we get too far along, there's a few more things I need to mention about Chokmah and Binah. We can't personify except in lower spheres. Remember now I said that each one of the higher spheres they also exist in the lower dimensions in Yetzirah and in Ashia. We can't be personifying too much. We do personify. Obviously, we personify based on Jungian archetypes, and we personify based on pagan gods and goddesses. But personification in dimensions like Bria and Atziluth is it really you're so high up at that point that personifications are really not. There's something that you should be about. If you really are up in those dimensions, you should be beyond that point. But so perhaps the best way to look at it is to don't try reaching these higher spheres in their own dimensions. Try reaching them in the lower dimensions, and that way you can use symbolism like John of Patmos uses in the Book of Revelations. And by the way, the Book of Revelations is an exercise in Merkaba mysticism, which was the ascension of the spheres previous to the Kabbalah. That Merkaba mysticism came before the Kabbalah. But that's what the Book of Revelation is. It's Merkaba mysticism. So with that in mind, even though we like to think of Binah as the Soma Sophia, as the vast universe of the stars and all. With that in mind, let's bring that power down to Da'ath and talk about Da'ath. Now, Da'ath was once, and this has been theorized numerous times, Da'ath was once a real sphere. According to some theories, it was a real sphere that fell when they fall, and the fall, of course, is supposedly analogous, or at least it's been allegoricized in, if that's a word, allegoricized. But did I do like Clark Ashton Smith and invent a word? I don't know. Allegoricized. It's been allegoricized in the sense that the Garden of Eden, of Eve eating the apple and all of that, and which is something that, by the way, has two totally different interpretations, just like the Cain and Abel thing does. Eve eating the apple is really wasn't that evil, although she got blamed for it according to the Yahwehists blamed her, and we've been suffering. Women have been suffering ever since, and ever since they decided to blame her for the fall of man. But regardless of that, let's say the fall of man, from a Gnostic, maybe a Hermetic point of view, the fall of man kind of comes along with the fallen angels. The fallen angels, the Book of Enoch, and bringing knowledge down to man. And you remember in the Bible, in Genesis, it says that God, in His role as Elohim, God the committee, or God, male and female, and with all His Elohim around Him, He says we're going to have to keep Adam. We're going to have to keep Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden now, because if they eat of the tree of knowledge, they're going to become like us. And you remember He said, like us. What does He mean by us? He means He and she and the Elohim. That's what He means. And the Da'ath sphere was once a sphere that was knowledge, and when it fell, with the fall, it went all the way down to Malkuth, and that's when it disappeared. Now, in order for us to reascend the tree, in order for us to reascend the tree, we find it necessary to reconstruct or recreate Da'ath, which we've done, and created an 11-sphere tree that reconstitutes Da'ath, and we've done that in order to get us across the abyss, and also give us a proper sphere for Saturn. Now, what ended up happening when they established this 10-sphere tree, described earlier, the Kabbalah has some flaws, and it has some mathematical and by inference geometric flaws. And one of the big flaws of the Kabbalah is it has no place. It has no place for all of the symbolism of the zodiac and of the elements, and it has no place for the element of Earth, and so it substitutes Saturn for that, and that ends up causing a problem where they started applying planets to the spheres of the Tree of Life. Now, you want to put some blame on this, you're going to say, well, who stuck planets on the Tree of Life? I guess we can blame Moses de Leon for that in the Zohar, because he certainly did. And so what ends up happening here is we got all of the hermetic planets, the moon, Venus, Mercury, the sun, and Jupiter and Mars, and Saturn. But if you start doing that, you end up putting Saturn up in Bria, up in Bina, and Saturn just plain doesn't go there. They did it; they stuck it up there, and Dion Fortune tries to rationalize it, and it's one of these things like It's one of these things like blue pentagrams that Kabbalists keep trying to justify them after the fact, but Saturn just plain does not belong in Bria, and it does not belong in Binah. It belongs in the Eye, and that's the death point. That's where you go out. That's right at the abyss, right up there, and. So we reconstituted Da'at with and had it attributed to Saturn, where it should be. Now, okay. What happens then? You're screwing up the number system? No, we're not, because this way, all we have to do then is make Kether 0, and that makes Chokmah 1 and Binah 2 and Da'at 3, and that takes care of the whole problem. And so. Becomes, as I said, the death point. Now, if Lady Joe, if you'll look at that page in the Hermetic Kabbalah, we have the fallen angels who are all condensed. All those fallen angels, all 200 of Shemyaza's fallen angels, all get the 50 boys on one side and the 50 girls on the other side. We've condensed them all down, following Moses to Leon again, into Azza and Azazel. So Azza's on one side and Azazel's on the other, and they're chained in the mountain of darkness, and there they are, and oh boy, we got to get loose. and of course, and Azazel, he kind of fell like there, and so they're still in love with each other, and they still want to get loose, and you notice, if you notice the symbolism there, the Da'at is attributed to Mot, the Grim Reaper, and who isn't really all that grim, but I mean he's so we go on up. Now, as I said, when you're making your ascent, you're going up the paths. When you go up the tree, you shouldn't really go and enter Saturn, except that once a year. And I get that basically. I'm taking Luding Khen Rinpoche's advice on that. See, the Tibetans have a similar operation to this, and they call it Powa, and this is basically death practice. And they do it, but they don't do it too often, because it's it's practicing to go on your own time when you want to go, and so I hope that answers your question, Lady Joe, about the Da'at. But Da'at is, at least in our system, it is. And Dion Fortune, they've stuck with this poor lettering and numbering thing that they had as a result of their only 10 spheres and their 22 missing two letters from the alphabet that they should have had. And don't just take my word for that. Gershom Scholem admits it. They were stuck with taking this death situation all the way up to into Bria. They couldn't even manage it in the abyss where it ought to be, and so we've made that necessary correction. And actually, as I said about these dimensions, and one should remember. And that, yes, you can visit these higher spheres, but I do not suggest that you visit them in the dimension that they're in. That's way too high. These are higher levels of I hate to say vibration. I don't want to use that. I think that term's overused. That's something that came out of the Kabbalion, and it's that's a little bit overused. Let's say that they're finer dimensions, and granted, like dimensions of the simultane, they exist all around us. There's one point that Dion Fortune makes in her book is that you should not think of the the tree of life as ascending above your head. Various people have made that mistake. One of Crowley's disciples, and I forget who, he thought he actually hallucinated and thought that the tree of life was like he was looking up at a great big pinball machine rising up in the sky, and thought that's what it was. No, these dimensions, the dimensions on the tree, are all around you. They are, and the tree, the 11 sphere, especially the 11 spheres, is like, in a way, it's like the 11 sphere, the 11 dimension postulated by M theory, and certainly the limitless nothing, or the limitless light condensing and forming this point of emanation, Kether, seems very much like something going on in the collider, doesn't it? I mean, this is very, very much like modern physics. In fact, we've been hearing that modern quantum physicists are taking a new look at the Kabbalah, and they have been for quite a while now, because. Well, just also like Isaac Luria was the first one to theorize that that the two halves of the brain, the two sides of the brain, were one was intuitive and the other was more directional, more proactive, and one was intuitive. I think he got them mixed up, but at least he theorized it, and way back then. So the structure of the Kabbalah should be studied and should be mastered, and you should remember that it is your operating software. It is not a map. It is a schematic, and it is and once you memorize it, and once you make it yours, then it will work for you. And you can be just as Jungian as you want to be with it. You can have as many. You can use pagan archetypes. That's wonderful. Elementals and all of these wonderful beings that you can visualize and use the tree of life to stimulate your imagination and use your imagination, and it is your magical. It's your magical software, literally, And so I think that I have just about covered about this subject about as much as we need to get it across, at least at this point. I encourage you to read the Hermetic Yoga book, and if you have a copy of Solomon's Magic, this article of Solomon's Magic is a little bit dated, but it's still good, and. But if you can find a copy of Dion Fortune's The Mystical Kabbalah, I'll tell you one thing about the Mystical Kabbalah, which I need to say. She didn't cover the paths. And the reason why she didn't cover the paths were at the time she wrote the book, which was way back in the early 1920s, the paths were still secret. That's Golden Dawn attributions to the paths. And she felt that if she spent too much time on the paths, that she'd be revealing too much that she was oath obligated not to. So the paths are dealt with more extensively in her student, Gareth Knight, my friend Basil Wilby. He dealt with her. He filled in the gaps with her paths, and that's the Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism. And we've used that. And then we've used John Michael Greer's Paths of Wisdom, which draws on both of those books, by the way, and in a more modern way, and whatever. And I recommend all three of these books, but especially, and Rigardi went along with me on this. He thought Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah was a masterpiece, and he said, "Oh, that's much much better than my Garden of Pomegranates." He said Mystical Kabbalah, and he's right. Well, some of the things that we've read to you from Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah are certainly in the masterpiece category, especially what we just read about the Elohim. And this woman was a genius Promethean proportions, or like Athena, sprung full arm from the brow of Zeus. And so I strongly recommend the Mystical Kabbalah by Dion Fortune. Is it still available, Zandria? Oh yeah, she says it is. Okay, so I strongly recommend that, and especially to get the concept in your guts, to get the conception of the Kabbalah, the Hermetic Kabbalah now across, and then also if you want to be more traditional, Leonora Leach's Secret Doctrine of the Kabbalah is very good too, and there's a lot of very good information in there. Now, next week we have a real treat for you. Our friend Ed Reeb of one of the Golden Dawn temples here locally has interviewed the Master Philos, and Mary Kamer, and he has that interview, and we're going to run that next week on the Hermetic Hour, and you get to hear Ed interviewing the Master Philos, and so until next week, we'll see you then, and good magic.